Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I didn't hear the first calls for evacuation as much as I felt them. The air inside the cruiser turning strange and thin, while the radio stacked voices in uneven layers. The lane closures and wrong way reports came first, and then the missing units, and then shrieking vehicle alarms across the East LA interchange, as though the concrete itself had begun to warn us off. I was already in the weave between the Santa Ana, I-5, the Golden State, I-5, the San Bernardino, I-10, and US 101 when the dispatch voice cracked and repeated the same instruction 3 times. Do not stop on the main line. Do not engage crowds. Proceed to a safe staging area. That was 2 hours before we understood the scale of what was crawling and stumbling over the rails and between the stalled cars. By then, everything that could be a trap had become one. I am Officer Erin Vale, California Highway Patrol, 7 years on. My cruiser that day was a Ford Police Interceptor utility with a push bumper, a Wellen light bar that had seen better weather, a shotgun in the vertical rack between the seats, and a radio shelf crowded with a mobile VHF set and a mutual aid unit that could reach Clemars and Calal channels. In the back was the usual: flares, a first aid kit, a jump box, 2 reflective vests, a roll of caution tape, a tow strap, a pry bar, spare water, and a laminated set of hazardous materials placards with UN numbers I could read from memory. It felt like a lot when it was just me. It felt like nothing at all when the highway started moving like a living thing. The first mile of stalled vehicles after I merged onto the I-10 westbound ramp looked like any holiday weekend that had gone wrong. Horns, heat, 1,000 faces peering out through glass. I nosed onto the shoulder and crawled along the fog line, spotlight raking the gaps between bumpers. A billboard rattled in the wind coming off the river channels. The downtown skyline breathed haze and sun glare, completely indifferent. Every third car. Someone was standing out on the shoulder with a phone up and an expression I will never forget. Not fear, exactly. Something like weightlessness, like the moment a seatbelt catches you. I saw the ambulance 30 cars up the shoulder, abandoning any attempt to move forward, trying to wedge its way onto a short, steep maintenance ramp that would have taken it to the catwalks under the interchange. The driver was a woman in a county EMS polo, her hair tied up, a tourniquet looped around her arm like she'd simply run out of places to put things. She saw me, cursed into her shoulder mic, and waved wildly. I braked, threw the cruiser into park, flicked the overheads to alternating flash, and stepped out. The air was sharp with baked asphalt and the sweet, dizzying smell of spilled fuel. "You Erin?" she said, eyes moving past me to the shotgun, the push bumper, the hope that the car represented. "Yes," I said. "You stuck or just done with this lane?" "Both," she said. "I'm Lena." Partner went on foot to check a blockage. Didn't come back. We got calls to get off the main line and stage at the way station up north. That rumor your rumor? "I've got the same," I said. "Newhall Scales. They're pulling units toward Castaic. You alone?" "For the moment," she said. "I got a half kit, O2, AED, Narcan, and what's left of a trauma bag. I've also got 50 cars between me and any ramp that isn't wedged with metal." Behind her, the world moved in ways I was still refusing to file under one word: people between cars. Some fell and stayed down. Some fell and got back up wrong, and then corrected and moved again. The radio stuttered warnings about downtown hospitals, about fire stations sealing their doors, about personnel told to shelter in place. A voice I knew, Klein's, crashed into the channel with a description of a man who had been hit at low speed, repeating the way he had stood back up and walked against the flow of people without locating where the voice came from. "Get in with me," I said to Lena. "We'll come back for the ambulance if we get the right moment." I need the med gear and I need another set of hands. She adjusted her shoulder mic and moved fast. We shifted the AED and a bag of gauze and a portable oxygen cylinder into my trunk. She slid into the passenger seat, clipped her belt, and turned her eyes to the windscreen. I saw in her the math of constraints that has always comforted me. Inventory wrapped in steel and plastic, a path like a puzzle, a bad situation that could be managed with a series of decisions and disciplined movement. The other word, the big one, was there too. But if I said it out loud, it would start defining our steps. I wasn't ready for that. I let the push bumper kiss a compact rear tire and began to nudge. I did it slowly, steady pressure, easing the vehicle sideways just enough to open a slot. When the owner banged on my hood, I used the loudhailer and a practiced tone. "Stay behind the barrier, sir. We're opening a path for emergency traffic." He yelled something wordless. I pushed the car another 10 inches, then feathered back. Cars slid reluctantly into places they hadn't been designed to occupy. People shrank away from the bumper and then tried to use the wake to move into our lane. A tide I had to close with quick taps of the wheel and the horn. The light bar threw colour into the bright afternoon, like it was trying to paint the air with order. 2 cars later, a semi sat at a diagonal, its tractor angled hard toward the concrete wall. A textbook jackknife without speed. The trailer locked against a box truck that had given up trying to insinuate itself past. The semi's hood was up. The driver sat on the step, head down, hands on his knees. A big man in a faded ball cap and a shirt with grease already in the pattern of his day. He looked up when I eased to a stop. "You Malik?" I said. I didn't know why I asked it that way. Maybe it was how he carried himself, how truckers all look halfway between home and road. "Close enough," he said. "My name is Malik. Air is dropping on my trailer. We got a slow leak and I can't build enough pressure to release the brakes. Compressor's still running. If I can get the line patched, I move this like a plow." "Where are you headed?" "North," he said. "I heard scales are open for law. Heard they're letting civilians in if they help hold the perimeter. It's air brakes, not rocket science. If I had another set of eyes and 2 zip ties and a strip of hose, we could move this mess." "I have ties," I said, "and a tourniquet might hold for 3 minutes if you're careful. We need that lane." "I can run it," he said. "Name?" "Erin," I said. "This is Lena. We're making for Newhall. You want to be point?" "Born for it," he said, and stood. "You got a siren that'll run without you in the car?" "I can rig it," I said. "Set to Yelp. Loop it through the loudhailer. It draws, but I have a fresh battery." I turned to Lena. "We'll use the cruiser as a lure if we have to. I need you to watch the northbound ramp and tell me when the crowd starts to thicken." Lena nodded, already half out of her seat, bag slung. "Got it." Malik climbed into his tractor, slapped the dash like he was waking up a friend, and flicked a series of switches that made the rig hum in a way that inspired confidence. He popped the parking brake, watched his needles, frowned, and then killed the engine. "Leak by the service glad hand," he said out the window. "Red line's hissing. I got spare hose, but it's buried under everything I own." "We can do a field fix," I said. I grabbed the pry bar and a handful of zip ties. Malik dropped from the cab with a practiced hop, went under the trailer like a swimmer, and I followed to the skirting. He pointed. The service line had a crack at the coupling. Air that should have been moving in a closed system was sighing into the bright day. He cut a small length off the good end, sleeved it over the crack, and cinched it down with ties, like he'd done it so many times his hands were performing without his brain needing to get in the way. He looked at me, then at the tourniquet on my belt. I nodded. He looped the band around the patch, tightened the windlass just enough to compress the sleeve without cutting the line, and secured it. "That'll buy us maybe an hour if we're lucky," he said. "I drive gentle. If we hit anything uneven, I'll feather the brakes until the compressor catches up." "I'm going to put the cruiser 10 cars ahead as a decoy," I said. "Yelp pattern. I'll set the PA to repeat a recorded sequence, and then kill the engine and lock it. When the crowd moves toward the sound, you go. Lena, ride with him for now. I'll find the ambulance later." "What about you?" Lena said. I clear the shoulder and keep anyone from climbing onto the tractor, I said. And then I get back to you. You should have a long gun, Malik said quietly, glancing at the rack. I have one, I said. We keep language careful, but I have what I need. We moved like we had been drilled together. I toggled the siren to yelp and recorded a short, calm message onto the PA loop. Emergency vehicle clearing passage. Please move to the right. Stay inside your vehicles. I let that loop at low volume, then inched the cruiser forward on the shoulder, placed it where an off-ramp guardrail created a funnel, and left it idling with the doors locked and the keys on my belt. The swirl of sound reached the crouched and leaning shapes between the lanes. Heads turned. A figure 3 cars deep lifted itself over a hood and moved toward the sound with a single-mindedness that made my throat go dry. Now, I said into the mic. Lena slid into the passenger seat of the Semi next to Malik. He cranked the engine. Air pressure needles rose together. He watched them like a pilot. When the needle cleared 90 psi, he eased the clutch and the rig settled into a low, human pace. The box truck sighed against the trailer as the Semi straightened, and then the push bumper on my cruiser's Ghost, a vehicle at rest 10 cars up, took all the attention that might have swarmed his step rail. Malik drove like he was pulling a thread through a needle. He let the push bumper, a welded steel bar he'd mounted before any of this, do the slow work against bumpers and fenders. He didn't ram. He pressed, paused, and let metal memory reset. The big tires whispered. He was an obvious target, something for desperate hands to climb. But the sound of the cruiser tugged at the crowd like a current. People, and the ones who had become something else, peeled toward the siren. I walked beside the Semi's step on the driver's side, hand on the grab bar, using my presence like a thin shield and a warning. Stay back, I said. We're clearing a lane for emergency traffic. Some listened, some didn't, but most moved toward the light and the sound that promised authority, and Malik slid the rig past like a whale through a field of boats. 10 cars later, we broke into a small section of open lane. The highway curved and the tangle opened into a long, shimmering view of halted northbound traffic on the I-5 connector. Off to our right, a tanker sat dented against the barrier. The white diamond on its side was printed with 1203 and the red field for flammable. Gasoline. The trailer's skin was scabbed with scratches but intact. A sedan beneath it had its roof peeled back like the lid of a can. The smell in the air made the back of my throat tight again. Keep it slow, I said into Malik's cab. No sparks, no metal on concrete if you can help it. Copy, he said. We'll thread it. We did. It took 5 minutes to clear a space that would have taken 20 seconds on any other day. Lena leaned out the window to tap mirrors and wave driver's side hands back inside their vehicles. We passed a minivan with a shattered windshield and a child's drawing taped to the headrest. We passed a delivery truck with the back roll-up door torn halfway open, boxes disgorged behind it like a breadcrumb trail. We passed a man lying next to a Prius, hands folded, eyes open, chest still. I did not check him. Another day, I would have. This day had rules that were changing by the minute, and one of them was that stopping pulled the world onto you. The last cars before the ramp were pinned by a school bus that had tried to use the left shoulder to get ahead. It had found a Jersey barrier instead. The front axle had climbed and stuck. The bus's right rear wheels spun, useless. The yellow paint was dusted with soot and daylight. The roof numbers said it had run a route in the city. The door was open. The interior was empty. The driver had tried to angle back down and failed. The bus had become a plug, an accidental barricade. Let me out, Lena said suddenly. 2 ambulances back. I saw a county rig. I can get supplies. She had the tone that makes people move. I'll cover, I said. 2 minutes, then back with us. She ran light, weaving through bumpers and angled fenders with the grace of someone who had learned to move around emergencies without becoming an additional one. She found the ambulance, ripped the side door, and came back with a green bag and a hard case tucked under her arm. I watched every angle, every shape that could unfold itself into the path between us. Shotgun low and my stance anchored. A man 4 cars away tried a door handle and then tried mine. I shook my head, held his gaze, and kept my voice level. "Stay with your vehicle," I said. "We will open a path for everyone if we can." He stared at me like I had just invented an unfair rule. Then he turned away and walked toward the sound of the siren that wasn't me. We reached the bus. Malik braked, and air sighed around us like the rig was relieved. He peered at the angle, the barrier, the way the bus's frame sat wedged like a nail half hammered into a board. "If we can free this thing," he said, "we have ourselves a rolling wall. That bumper will clear everything short of the tanker. If we can't, we have to go around, and that puts us up on the overpass with no protection." "Your call," I said. "You know your equipment. I know how to balance a brake bar on a hinge." "I can hotwire it if the key's gone," he said. "But we have a bigger problem. That air system won't charge instantly. The brake chambers on these buses need pressure. I'll need at least 90 psi to roll without fighting it. I can bypass the ignition and jump the solenoid, but I need the engine to build. While we wait, the noise will pull everything to us. You have that siren trick?" "I do," I said. "I can move the cruiser farther up and set the audio to draw. But to get to my car, I have to leave you." "I'll keep Lena," he said. "She can watch my mirrors and the right side. You go. I'll be in the bus bay. If someone left a key, it's under the visor like every Los Angeles driver swears nobody does anymore." He grinned, and it was so out of place that Lena and I both grinned back and felt human for a moment. I ran. I stayed on the center line where people were least used to standing. I kept my shoulders low, kept my eyes moving, kept one hand near the radio mic and the other near the safety strap of the shotgun. The cruiser flashed a block ahead, patiently doing its fake job. I climbed in, killed the engine, moved it another 10 car lengths forward, using idle and brake to avoid any slap of tire or clatter of stray metal, and rearmed the loop. The crowd surged toward it again, like tide toward a pier piling. By the time I returned to Malik and Lena, the bus door was closed, and the interior lights glowed. Malik's voice came over the handheld he had left on the semi's seat. "Engine is on," he said. "Battery cutoff was under the panel where it should be. Key was not under the visor, for the record. Hotwired the starter. Oil pressure is good. Air is building. 50 psi and rising. I'm watching for 58 to 60 for the warning buzzer to quiet, and 90 for a decent release. I'll take a slow roll and we'll use the tractor as a shove from behind to get me off this barrier. Erin, I need you on my right mirror and ready to control the lane." "I'm here," I said, and stepped into the channel where his right mirror gave me a thin frame against the day. "Lena, you strap in?" "Seat bar down," she said. "I have a bag wedged in the stairwell to brace the toolbox. If someone tries to open the door, I can close it quick." "Copy," Malik said. "Air at 80, buzzer is off, 85, 90. Here we go." The bus made a sound that would have been nostalgic any other year. It was a friendly sound. It was not friendly in that moment. The rear tires bit and then chirped as the bus tried to climb back down the barrier line. It did it slowly, and the frame creaked as the angle shifted. Malik feathered, then paused, then feathered again, patient and skilled. The front bumper had a crease that fit the world like a key. "Walk it back," I said quietly, as if he could hear a voice not on the radio. He could. The bus settled and then dropped the last inch with a lurch that felt larger than it was. The nose swung toward the open lane. The interior light flickered and steadied. Malik set the parking brake, breathed out, and then released it again, and took a shallow travel speed forward. 20 feet, 40, then stopped to let the semi-angle behind the bus's rear. "We bolt," he said. "We bolt," I said, "but slow. The ramp to the I-5 connector is choked. We want the left lanes on the upper deck, not the collector distribution road under the split. It will be easier to hold the high ground. If we get forced up the overpass, we commit to crossing it. We do not stop on the bridge deck. We do not stop in the chute. We do not stop under an overpass or in a tunnel. If we stall, we let the bus carry the weight and the semi keep it honest from behind. We moved as a unit. The bus took the lead. I walked the right side, then jogged to the left and back again. controlling the flow like the world was still normal enough to respond to simple human signals. And to my surprise, sometimes it did. We threaded past a pickup that had been abandoned at an angle so perfect for blocking that I suspected someone had put it there as a barricade. We edged past a propane delivery truck with 1075 stenciled on its placard and a long-handled wrench still hanging from the fill valve. I didn't look long at the route that truck had taken to get to that exact spot. I just said, "Keep to the center," and Malik did. We hit the ramp, and the bus's weight made the broken concrete feel like a drumhead underfoot. The deck shuddered, not from structural failure, but from the huge numbers of bodies and cars acting like a load the bridge hadn't been asked to bear in that way before. I could feel the difference between the physics of steel and the physics of panic. The guardrail hummed with people pushing against it, on the other side of the drop to the level below. If I looked down, I could see the 60-5 connector with cars like beads on a string, and the people between them, and the way they moved when they heard the bus engine. I toggled my handheld to mutual aid and kept my voice steady. Westbound 10 to northbound 5 connector, lane 3, bus in lead, semi behind, CHP unit on foot left side, attempting to reach collector for 101 north split. Any units south of the interchange, acknowledge. Static, then a voice that might have been a city unit or a county one, too shredded to place. East side overpass is compromised. Do not stop on deck. Repeat, do not. I didn't need the warning to know. The far end of the overpass had a dip in it that was not in the plans. A sag where concrete had spalled and rebar exposed like tendons. Cars had gotten trapped at the low point, and the people trying to go around had produced a thick knot that moved and didn't move all at once. The weight distribution was wrong. The bridge was still standing, but the sound of it was a sound I had only ever heard once before during a windstorm. A long, hollow tone that wasn't on any radio band. "We keep momentum," I said into the bus's handheld. "We do not stop on the low point. If we have to, we ride the crown on the left, use the push bumper and the corner guard. We are not here to be pretty. We are here to keep the deck live under us." As if the world wanted to prove that it could still make jokes, someone's hand hit the bus's door. It was a reflex, the same one that makes people knock on a bathroom door that's obviously occupied. Habit and hope. Lena swung the door lever closed and braced. Malik kept the wheels straight and steady. The bus became a statement that was easy to understand. We are going through. The vehicles ahead of us looked like they might disagree. The semi behind us removed that option. The truck's push bumper found the center of an SUV that had been abandoned in park with the wheels cut. The bumper pressed, the hood crumpled, the tires rotated under the force like a dog being guided gently by the collar. Metal objected, then gave. The sound was loud and awful, and neither of us flinched because flinching would have been a kind of apology, and we were done apologizing for the physics it took to keep people alive. We hit the low point. The bridge deck shivered. The bus passed over it like a boat crossing the wake of a larger one. For a second, the steering went light. Malik corrected and kept the wheels centered. The semi's rear axles crossed the sag, and I listened so hard for any sound that wasn't the ones we wanted that I forgot to breathe. And then we were moving up again toward the crown, where the deck felt like one piece instead of several. On the far side, the ramp narrowed. To the right, the collector-distributor lanes fed to US 101, already locked solid across all lanes. To the left, the ascending curve of the I-5 North opened onto an upper deck I could see beyond the immediate morass, an area where the gridlock thinned because fewer cars had attempted the climb before they realized it was a hill they couldn't leave. "Left," I said. "Take the left. We'll go for 5 North." "Copy," Malik said. "Left." The bus's front bumper kissed a series of plastic barrels and slewed them aside. They danced and spun, and then came to rest against a barrier where they would still be telling a story about this day in a year if the world allowed it. We moved into the gap and up onto the curve where the city became a panorama again. Halfway through the curve, the deck stopped vibrating and started twitching. I saw the crack before I felt it. It ran across lane 2 like a pencil line, chased with brown where rain had gotten in and rust had done the rest. Under us, the bridge made a sound like a snapped branch played on a speaker turned way down. Malik heard it. Lena heard it. I heard it. We all said nothing for 1 second, and then all said everything. "Speed up," I said, not because I wanted to go fast, but because I wanted to be where the bridge would hold if it decided to complain more loudly, just enough to get off the joint. "Copy," Malik said. The bus's diesel rumbled deeper. The semi found traction and stayed committed like it was attached to us by a rule rather than a strap. We passed the crack and the twitch went back to a shiver. The deck behind us did something that made a man 3 cars back sit down where he was, mid-stride, and just stay there. I wanted to stop and pick him up. Instead, I kept walking because my presence on the mirror was part of the spell that kept the bus moving. Sometimes, the best help is being part of a machine that keeps the next 30 people from becoming the next 30 we grieve. On the upper deck, the air changed. There were fewer cars and more noise from those that were there, alarms mostly, and a motorcycle that had fallen and kept trying to start itself with its starter button wedged against the tank. Ahead, in the distance where the lane markers turned to dots and the curve promised another view, a knot of people was standing on a delivery truck, waving their arms. Their faces said rescue. The truck's open back said resource. It was full of bottled water and pallets of packaged food, the kind you stack in bulk. 3 men had positioned cars to make a V in front of the truck and were stopping anyone who tried to pass. They had bright reflective vests on, like they were doing construction in the end of the world. I've never trusted people who try to control a road they didn't build. "Roadblock," I said into the mic. 3 at least, might be more behind the truck. They have not seen us yet. They're stopping cars. We don't have time for negotiation. "I can move the V," Malik said, "but they might move themselves." "We do it calm," I said. "Lena, mic to them. Keep it friendly. We're official enough to get by, and we will keep them intact in the wake. They can follow if they choose. We don't share fuel. We can offer them water from the truck behind if the driver says yes." Lena toggled the PA. "This is emergency traffic," she said in that clear paramedic voice that lands in the right parts of people's brains. "We are opening a lane. Move your vehicles to the right. If you cooperate, you can follow in our wake. If you do not, you will be moved." One of the men waved his arms bigger, as if to say he understood the words, but not the context. He pointed at his own chest, and then at the truck like a declaration of jurisdiction. Lena repeated herself. The bus did not slow. The semi did not slow. The men stayed where they were. "Erin," Malik said, "on you." "Steady pace," I said. "No last-second swerves, no bluff. Honest physics." At 10 miles per hour, the bus's bumper met the first car in the V and eased it sideways like it was on casters. The man at its hood slapped the metal and then realized that his hands had just made contact with something that did not care if it was going to be negotiated with. He backed away. The second car took the nudge and rolled. The men stepped back as a unit and then broke in 3 different directions. One ran up into the open back of the truck and tried to tug at a plastic-wrapped pallet as if the pallet was a moral object he could carry. Another simply ran. The third stood still too long, then stepped away just before he would have been gently struck and then rolled again by the bus's curved corner. His face carried shock, not at the bus, at the world. We were through. I didn't look back to see if they followed. I listened to the tires thrum where a joint changed the sound and then steadied. I counted 3 breaths and then 3 more. The downtown skyline was distant now, the towers like toys. The air smelled like rubber and fuel and the dust from 1,000 brake linings. It also smelled like decision, if such a thing had a smell. At the next split, a hand-painted sign on cardboard said fuel with an arrow pointing at a rest area. The arrow pointed at a concourse packed with cars. Gasoline does not multiply under pressure. The rumor that stations would be open for emergency use was a rumor that would kill people who chased it without understanding what traffic plus scarcity does to a crowd. We rolled past. Inventory. I said to Lena between my own breaths. What do we have in the bus for people who can walk and people who can't? 2 trauma kits, 1 good O2 cylinder, 1 marginal, she said. IV fluids, but saline is not a cure for anything we're seeing today. AED, splints, a child kit. I've also got an extra pair of nitrile gloves and a face shield that will make me feel better more than it will actually help. And water. I grabbed water. I have tourniquets, bandages and tape, I said. I have a small roll of duct tape because my life is sometimes a cliche. I have flares and I hate that I have flares, but I'm glad I do. I have a thermal blanket. And my cruiser has a siren that will work until the battery doesn't. I've got a set of metric and SAE, zip ties, a pry bar, a small welder that runs off a generator that is currently in the belly of a semi that is following us, and enough seat time to make a piece of metal go where I ask it, Malik said. I also have a baseball cap that my daughter painted when she was 5. I think it makes me bulletproof. I am aware that it does not. We drove. We passed 2 more tankers, both still, both without leaks, both with numbers I could recite and translate without reading. We passed a small group walking down the shoulder against traffic, with backpacks and a look of grim practicality. They stepped out of the bus's way like they would have on any weekday morning. The world cultures itself into habits. It takes a while for new habits to overwrite muscle memory. Our habit was forward motion. It kept us inside a plan when everything else wanted to make it stop and look. Somewhere near the interchange where the 5 meets the 2, the deck widened out and then funneled again. Overhead signs told us what we already knew, that north was north and south was not an option. The way station that had become our North Star was many miles ahead, beyond the San Fernando Valley, beyond the baffle of interchanges, and the places where the freeway descended to meet ground and rose again. We would pass the Glendale Boulevard cut, the 134, and the maze around Burbank. The map in my head said that if we could keep clear of the worst choke points, we could reach a stretch where the highway would run like a ribbon in the near distance, the kind of road that lets you believe you can make speed again. Malik's voice went a notch quiet. Air pressure dropped a touch, he said. Patch is holding, but I'm watching it. I can keep a cushion by keeping my foot light. If we get into stop and go again, I'll need room. We'll give it to you, I said. We'll bring the bus's bumper to bear if we have to. The bus has a higher ride height and a better approach angle. We can let it take the load. Lena had been flipping through a city map booklet she had found in the bus's driver pouch, the kind that still had paper pages worn translucent by thousands of thumbs. If we get forced off, the Glendale Streets grid is not our friend. Too many signals, hills that aren't obvious until you're on them. If we leave the freeway, we do it to cross to another one, not to live there. Copy, I said. We stay elevated where we can. Elevation is visibility and time. We were in the curve that carries the 5 northbound along the river when the open lanes ahead ran out. Not all at once. The first cue was the sound, which changed from a rumble to a kind of thick quiet that came from a mass that wasn't moving. The second was the line of cars, stretching across all lanes, angled and upright in a way that said they hadn't stopped because of an accident. They had stopped because the people inside had decided to abandon them. Beyond the cars, an overpass. On the overpass, movement. Under it too, bodies and shapes in the shade where the glare went soft. On the near side, a school district truck sideways across lane 2 and 3 with its bed full of traffic cones. The farther we looked, the more we saw of the same. Institutional vehicles repurposed by people who had tried to take control of the problem with the tools they had, and the problem had ignored them. This is where we choose, I said, and a part of me smiled that we were still talking like that. Choices require time. And time was a commodity we had managed to buy by being bold and competent and lucky. There, Lena said quietly, pointing. Left shoulder, between the barrier and the first stalled car. It's narrow, but the bus will fit. The semi can ride the right stripe and give the bus a nudge if the barrier snags the hub. If we're careful, We can get to the ramp that climbs to the overpass. On the overpass, we might have collapse risk, or we might have a clearing. If we stay down here, we are in a bowl with more ways for things to approach us. Malik made a thoughtful sound that was his version of a nod. I like up, he said. If the deck complains, I drive like it's glass. I grew up in Detroit. If you can drive winter, you can drive a cracked California bridge. You're hired, I said. Let's go left. Or walk the shoulder and clear anything that will puncture a tire or drag on the hub. I went first, eyes on the ground, and then up for the shapes that could rise. A ladder had fallen off someone's rack and lay across the shoulder, one rung twisted. I dragged it aside and wedged it under a barrier rail to keep it from becoming a spring. A pallet jack sat near the wall. I pushed it, felt the smoothness of its hidden strength, and then flipped the handle down to lock its wheels. Plastic crates cracked under my boots and slid aside. I was writing a sentence on the roadway with actions that made sense to my hands. The bus crept beside me, its tire brushing a stripe of tar that felt soft in the heat. The semi followed, the difference in width, something we solved with a series of 1-inch decisions. We made the ramp and began the climb. Midway up, the deck changed its voice again, the hollow tone returning with an overtone that was not new, but that we hadn't heard at this volume yet. A series of small ticks like a cooling engine, except they were not cooling. They were warming, stress finding roots through steel. The overpass itself was a quilt of vehicles, some empty, some showing faces inside. The faces watched the bus and the semi with the look people reserve for unexpected authority. A man in a suit lifted a hand and then lowered it again, his manners overriding his panic. A woman tried to back her car into a space that did not exist, and in doing so, tried to enter the bus's space without malice. Malik let the bus's corner push her gently into the slot she'd been reaching for, and she looked up, startled, at the fact that fate sometimes arrives like a skilled driver and not like a lightning strike. We were 50 feet into the overpass when the far end dipped more than I could shrug off. Metal sound became voice. The long, low, human version came from all the throats around us as people felt something that wasn't a thing drivers feel. A section ahead, not at the crown, but toward the near abutment, had given way under the weight. Not fallen, but sagged enough that cars had ridden down into it and found themselves pointed nose up toward the far side, without a way to reverse. It was a trap built by bad geometry and fear. Commit, I said, because it was the only word that made sense. We go through. Malik did not ask me to confirm. He eased the bus forward, steady throttle, no bob, no jerk. The semi kissed the bumper with the affection of a friend who knows how to help without making a fuss. The bus's front wheels reached the lip of the sag and then went over, dropping 6 inches with a rattle that sounded larger because it was loaded with meaning. The bus's belly rubbed the crown briefly and then cleared. The rear axle went light and then heavy, and then we were in the trough. The far edge was steeper than any ADA ramp would have allowed, a wedge that assumed you had torque and patience. Malik had both. He climbed. The semi behind kept us honest, kept weight on the bus's driven axle by the simplest of Newton's heresies. A push in the correct direction at the correct time is a kind of grace. Halfway up the far lip, the bus lost traction for 1 stuttering second. The tire spun, rubber squealed. Lena's voice was calm in the way trained people get when their bodies understand that their mouths need to be the part that doesn't make things worse. Feather, she said. Not more, less. Malik did, just a touch, and the tire found an edge to bite. We slid forward another foot, then another. On the far side of the sag, a car door opened suddenly in front of the bus's nose. A young man stepped out, hands up like he was stopping a friend in a hallway. His eyes were wide and his breath fast. He was trying to get our attention, to talk, to ask for something we didn't have time to give. In any other circumstance, I would have held out my hand and said, "Tell me." Here, I pointed left with my whole arm, palm out, a traffic officer's signal for "move that direction now." He froze, then obeyed. He slid along his fender and put his back to the barrier. The bus's headlight brushed his jacket. He was safe because he had listened to a language older than words. We crested the far lip. The deck under us stopped complaining and went back to merely speaking. The people on the far side reacted to our arrival in a way that was not organized, but it harmonized. The lane we wanted opened like it understood the need, a kindness the day had not afforded us often. We moved through and over the high point. On the downward slope, a school bus like ours sat crosswise, engine off, keys gone, its body one more stanchion in a day full of them. "You see what I see?" Malik said. "I do," I said. "Another moving wall if we can wake it up." "You want it?" "I want it," I said. "But not now. We don't get greedy. We reach the scales. We hold there. Then we get clever. For now we keep going. Copy. Air is still on the safe side. If I ask for room, give it. You'll get it." When the interchange unrolled into the valley and the freeway straightened and widened, I let myself breathe more deeply for the first time since the day had started changing shape. To our right, the concrete river cut its usual line, indifferent. To our left, the low buildings of industrial blocks gave way to the edge of neighborhoods that had been built to sleep and eat in, not to watch the freeway like a movie. Police helicopters had been up earlier. Now the air was empty except for two small private aircraft banking away from the core, their engines as irrelevant to our work as birdsong. We hit a stretch where the stalled line broke and there were 50 yards of open lane. I jogged forward, tilted my head, listened. The noise in my ears was my own pulse and the rush of air past the bus. Lena said quietly, "We're going to have to make a decision about who we help along the way. We can't take everyone into the bus, but we can't leave everyone either." "I know," I said. "The way station rumour will have drawn a critical mass of people who can hold a line. If we can reach it, we can stand with them. Out here, every person we pull into our formation has to add more safety than they subtract. If they bring only need and no discipline, they'll get us all in trouble. That's not cruelty, that's triage." "I'll make a sign," she said. "We can tape it in the bus window. 3 follow rules behind this bus. Stay center, no honking, lights off, do not approach vehicles, do not leave lane. If they can read and follow that, they can come." "I like it," Malik said. "We'll get a little convoy. We become a moving neighborhood. People accept rules when they are spoken simply and delivered with confidence by someone who seems to know what is happening." I thought of my academy instructors and how they had taught us voice control for traffic stops and accident scenes. I thought of the times I'd walked up to a driver in a moment of their life they would remember forever, and how my tone had made that memory bearable. I could do that again, except now the stakes were expanded past any one wreck. We put the sign up. We picked 3 cars. A woman in a hybrid with a child in a car seat who kept his hands folded like he was playing a game in which stillness was the winning move. An older man in a station wagon with a neat haircut and a notebook open on his passenger seat. Bullet points visible from where I stood as if he was outlining his afternoon. A college kid named Diego in a hatchback with a paper atlas open on his lap and tabs marking all the routes out of the city like he had wanted to go on a road trip this very day, and the world had offered him one he hadn't ordered. Diego fell in behind the bus with a look of intense concentration. He kept exactly 2 car lengths, no more. When the bus slowed, he slowed. When Lena signalled with her hand out the window, palms down, calm, he matched his breathing to it. I saw maps in his eyes and catalogue mind, the kind that stores the names of exits and the number of lanes on a ramp like they are baseball stats. We passed cars I wanted to pull into our wake. We passed cars I wanted to avoid. Sometimes both were the same car. The triage grew heavier. The freeway finally grew light. Near Sun Valley, we finally saw what rumour had been promising. A hand-lettered sign tied to the overhead gantry with paracord. Way station open. Keep right no stop on mainline. Someone with sense had done that. The turn-off lane was clear, which told me more than the sign did. A clogged ramp means a bad plan. A clear ramp means the plan is working well enough for the people on the ground to keep the flow organized. We signaled and took the ramp. The bus's turn signal clicked like a metronome. The semi followed, and the 3 little cars behind did exactly as they had been instructed, which made my throat tighten with a feeling that was not fear. The scales spread out ahead, a long rectangle of asphalt with a building at the center and truck bays on one side. The usual digital readouts over the lanes sat dark. Someone had pulled the breakers and used the power for other work. Vehicles were angled to form a perimeter that was improvised but sound. Heavy trucks nose to tail making a wall. Smaller cars layered inside where they could be moved quickly. People moved along the line in reflective vests that had not been earned by any job title today, but by the act of stepping up and owning a task. A CHP unit sat at an angle near the control building, with its light bar flashing steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat you could listen to and calm down. An officer I knew, Cortez, stood on the step with a bullhorn. He saw me and his face did something complicated and then simplified. He lifted the bullhorn and his voice carried over the asphalt. "Vale," he said, and it was the closest anyone had come to making me feel like the day could be passed. "You bring us a bus and a truck, you aiming to make a wall we can drive." "That's the idea," I said, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. "Malik can drive a needle through fabric. Lena's a medic. I have traffic toys and a voice. We have a handful behind us who can follow instructions. What do you need most?" "A north wall," he said. "We're catching runners from the main line. Some are frantic, and some are not, who they were. We're using the truck scales lane as a controlled entry. We've got civilians triaging, and we're keeping the flow moving, not letting anyone stop and make the place a target. We need your bus at the north end as a moving barricade. We need your truck parked nose out, ready to move if we have to punch a hole for an ambulance. We need you to talk on a loudspeaker until your voice becomes the thing that defines the space. You get me a fresh battery for my cruiser, and I'll make your loudspeaker permanent," I said. "We can set it to a message that keeps it from sounding like panic. We can run CALAR 2 for coordination with County Med. We can make this feel like an intersection instead of a crisis." "Do it," he said, and handed me a radio with a strip of green tape on it that meant works, use it, protect it. Also, we're not using the word that everyone wants to use, not on the loudspeakers. We say infected or we say crowds. We do not give anyone permission to lose their discipline by telling a story about monsters. We tell a story about people and traffic." "Copy," I said, relief blooming in my chest. "I like your doctrine." "It's yours too," he said. "You taught half these kids how to talk on a traffic break without making the southbound lanes rubberneck. Now you're going to do it for a city." We built the wall. Malik put the bus where Cortez pointed, then rotated it 5 degrees so its bumper made a better angle against the likely approach. He shut it down and then started it again and let it idle so we had instant power and air on tap. He parked the semi-nose out next to the building and left it idling too. Airlines purring like content animals. Lena found a volunteer triage nurse and handed over her supplies, and then immediately took a station at the intake where she could spot people who were heading toward collapse and move them without drama. Diego parked his hatchback inside the interior line and unfolded his paper atlas on the hood like he was in a war room. He started marking off ramps in green and red and yellow. Green for passable, red for blocked, yellow for unknown. He did it with the focus of someone whose skills had gone from hobby to necessity without anyone asking permission. I climbed onto the bus's first step, took the PA mic and began to talk. "Slow down," I said over and over with variations. "Lights off, hands visible, keep right, follow the cones, keep your engine off if you can. We will move you when it is your turn. There is food and water, there is shelter. Do not leave your vehicle until you are asked to. If you are on foot, move along the right edge in single file. Do not stop to argue. Do not approach the north wall. We see you. We will reach you." For the first 10 minutes, I had to lay the sentences like bricks. At minute 11, the bricks began to hold themselves. People followed along. There is an odd kind of mercy in how quickly humans will return to order if someone credible tells them what that order is. I wanted to cry again, and I did not, because crying is a different language, and I was busy speaking the one that was saving people. We held like that for an hour. During that hour, the main line to our south thickened and thinned and thickened again as more vehicles arrived, and more people gave up walking and re-entered their cars, and then gave up again and climbed out. During that hour, a group of 5 tried to sprint the north edge, and were absorbed by the wall as if it were a membrane. We did it without spectacle. 2 officers, a volunteer in a vest, a length of caution tape that became a guide rail, a firm hand on a shoulder, a clear instruction. There was no fight. There was simply motion redirected into a better shape. During that hour, a delivery truck we did not need arrived, and the driver asked where to park. We pointed, and he parked, and then he handed out bottled water as if he had always dreamed of getting to do something that mattered with his day. At the end of that hour, the weight on the deck changed again. Not just the weight on the bridge out there, but the weight on the air around us. The loudness was the same, but its shape was different. I looked up. The crowd at the south approach was denser. Not just more bodies, more movement that did not respond to the loudspeaker voice. They were pushing fast. Fast in this context was a step that ignored the usual obstacles of cars and people like they were carpeting. The word we were not using did not need to be used to be true. The infected had found us again, or we had found them, or the city had shaken and they had sloughed toward the sound. "North Wall," Cortez said, his voice still calm. "Get ready." We were ready. Malik hit the bus's headlights and horn, and the sound was not an emergency siren and not a friendly toot. It was a building announcing that it could move under its own power. I spoke over the PA and slowed my cadence and lowered my pitch. "Stay inside the line," I said. "This will get loud for a moment. No one move. We are in control of this space." The first infected reached the bus's bumper and then decided the bus was a thing to go around instead of a thing to climb, which is a small miracle made of training and the decisions we had made earlier about how to present the bus. Humans climb things that look like platforms. They go around things that look like walls. We had made a wall. Malik feathered forward. The bus moved. The infected flowed along the bumper and skirted the corner and then met the parked semi's nose. They turned again. The wall worked. The days to come would have 1,000 subtle design decisions like this in them. Today, we had guessed right. In the churn, 3 people broke from the line and tried to slip north by crawling under a gap in the parked cars. Diego saw them before I did. He didn't shout. He jogged over and crouched and spoke in a tone that had somehow adopted the same cadence I was using on PA. "Not that way," he said. "You'll get hurt. Come this way with me." He led them back into the intake line as if he had always lived there. He looked like a traffic engineer, and in that second, that was the most heroic shape a body could take. After we pushed the bulge against the wall back into a manageable flow, I climbed down off the bus step and let someone else take the mic for a minute. My throat hurt in a way that told me I was doing it right. Cortez handed me a bottle of water, and I held it against my neck and then drank. Lena walked past with a woman whose forehead was bleeding in a neat line that said windshield rather than assault. She caught my eye and nodded to tell me that this work, this simple, manageable work, was still inside the other work. Malik leaned out the bus window and looked at me. "How long do you think we can hold this before the shape of it changes?" "As long as we remember that motion is a choice," I said. "We keep the flow. We don't let anything become static unless it is by design. We plan for the bridge to complain again and give it exits. We do not let people pile into good spaces until they become bad spaces. We tell another story every 5 minutes, and we make it the same one." He smiled. "Sounds like trucking around Chicago." "Traffic is traffic," I said. "It's just that the stakes got productized." He lifted a hand to his baseball cap. "My daughter painted a star on this when she was little," he said. "She told me it means I can find parking anywhere. This feels like it might qualify." We worked until the sun changed its angle, and the shade moved, and the temperature dropped enough that you could tell an hour had passed by the feel of the air on your skin. We built the habit in the people around us that they could ask where to go with their eyes and be told without humiliation. We absorbed 3 more little cars into our moving neighborhood and sent them out in a staggered pattern to bring stragglers from shoulder lanes into the intake. We learned the names of 4 volunteers who would be the backbone of this place if the night turned from bad to worse. And then the bridge complained again. Not the one under our feet, the one 200 yards south, the one we had crossed earlier. It made the sound that concrete and steel make when they decide they have been patient enough with the loads we put on them. The sag we had passed turned into a dent that was suddenly not theoretical. Cars that had been momentarily safe became the wrong shape to exist. We all saw it at once and all looked away because looking would mean adding that to the day when the day already had enough. Cortez didn't look away. He looked at me. "We have to move more people north faster," he said. "We can hold, but if that deck fails, we'll get a surge we cannot shape." "Then we go mobile," I said. "We take the bus and the semi and we make a lane on the main line and bring them into us like a comb. We do it in a sweep. We tell them what we're doing and we do it with confidence. And we don't stop for any one car that can't move. We move the ones we can and then we go again." "You're going to have to get back onto that ramp," he said. "And this time, you won't have 10 minutes to breathe during it." "I know," I said, and felt the strange joy I always feel in moments where the plan is simply a longer version of something we already did once. We've got a bus, a semi, a medic who doesn't scare, a kid who can label a map faster than a computer if you give him a pen, and a voice that people are listening to. We can do a sweep. Malik tapped the bus's wheel like it was a shoulder. "I'll lead, you flank. Lena rides with me. Diego, you take the hatchback and run parallel on the inside lane at a walking pace. You pick which cars can wake and follow. If they can't, you mark them for later with tape. We put a strip of blue on the mirror if they're to be moved by heavy equipment later. We put a strip of green if they're occupied and cooperative. We put no strip if they need a medic. That lets our perimeter teams know what to expect." "Where do we get blue tape?" Diego said, deadpan. I reached into the cruiser and pulled out a half roll left over from a crash scene where we'd marked a lane closure during a rainstorm. "Right here," I said. "And a permanent marker. You get letters too. G for green, B for blue, M for medic." He took them like a boy given a badge. "I'll make it neat," he said. We went back out. The sweep was not dramatic. It was a slow, committed, disciplined movement through a space that had opinions about whether movement should exist. We made it exist. The bus's bumper wrote clean arcs through fender-level obstacles. The semi's push bar made honest shapes out of dishonest angles. Diego's hand with the tape left bright flags on mirrors that told a story for anyone with eyes. Lena's hand with the glove tapped shoulders and pressed gauze and gave instructions that people obeyed, not because they had to, but because the tone told them they were being folded into something stronger than panic. Halfway through the sweep, someone tried to jump onto the bus's side, not a person asking for help, an infected who had made choices that were not choices anymore. The motion was fast, the way a person using only legs and not judgment can be. The hand hit the trim and then slid off. The bus's paint was smooth. The geometry was wrong for climbing. We had designed it that way without really knowing we were doing it. He fell and rose and moved in a line that felt like it had been drawn with a ruler by a mind that had lost all its curves. I didn't watch him long. I turned and spoke on the PA again because that was the work. Twice we had to stop for something larger than us. A wrecking crane that had tipped its boom against the barrier and a fuel spill that had turned the lane into a sheet of oil that would have taken our steering away if we had insisted on brute force. Both times we paused, recalculated, found a new angle, and went on. We did not do heroics, we did traffic. When we pulled back into the way station with the flock we'd gathered, the sun had shifted enough that shadows were long. The intake line had shrunk for the first time all day. The north wall was still a wall. The PA still worked, the volunteers still had names. Cortez met us and put his hand on the bus's mirror. "We'll take it from here for the next half hour," he said. "You drink water and eat something. We need your voices for the long loop." I stepped down. My legs said new things about my age. Lena's eyes were bright, but her shoulders sat lower. Malik removed his cap and showed us the star his daughter had painted, now a little more worn at the edges. Diego held up his hands, blue tape smudges, and a map with an overlay that now looked like a network instead of a random pile of lines. For the first time since the first call of the day, I let myself sit on the step and breathe like there was air for me too. The radio still murmured, the city still shifted under us, the deck still had opinions, but we had built a small place where movement meant safety and rules meant respect, and the words we chose were tools, not weapons. We had come off an overpass that had wanted to swallow us and turned a school bus into a statement and driven a semi like a pencil, and now we had a wall and a rhythm and a way to make more of both. It wasn't victory. It was a long day becoming evening with the promise that tomorrow we would wake up and do traffic again, and that would be enough to keep a city breathing one more day. I don't know how long we can hold a highway in our hands. I know this. As long as there are people who will listen to a calm voice tell them to keep right and hands visible, as long as there are drivers who can feather a throttle and medics who can hand someone a bottle of water and a strip of gauze without making it feel like charity, as long as there are kids who can draw maps and tape letters on mirrors that become instructions for strangers, we can make a road safe long enough for 1,000 decisions to add up to something that looks like survival. And if the bridge complains tomorrow, we will set our mirrors to catch the light. We will ease the bus down into the sag and up the other side again. And we will commit, because that is the shape of the story now. Motion, discipline, the refusal to let fear set the lanes. We do not use the word that breaks the world. We use the ones that build it back. On asphalt, we didn't get to pick under a sky that didn't sign any contracts. We say, clear the shoulder, keep left, keep right, hold fast, follow me. We say, this way. We say, you're okay. We said it all day. We will say it again. And while we are saying it, we will keep the engines alive and we will not stop on the deck. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.